Why is China so quiet? What is the real strategy? Is this war really about Iran? What's happening in the world? Are we seeing a managed shift away from pure dollar-centered globalization toward a more fragmented system shaped by inflation, gold, because that's back really, really strong, and strategic manufacturing?
Is the gold really there? And I know Germany and much of Europe have, they've taken back a lot of gold into their own hands. Physical, valuable things, like silver and gold, are becoming, necessary again.
You hear a lot of, Jensen Huang and Elon Musk and Sam Altman talking about a massive class divide. Okay, so will AI mainly create abundance and productivity, and no one is going to need a job?
The AI companies are now responsible for producing their own power. And all they're doing now is some of them are really clever and they go and buy up other power suppliers that's supplying, the grid.
And he was saying, if you want to grow exponentially, you really need to invest, I'm paraphrasing, but investing in innovation. So when I look at China and I see their strategy compared to anywhere else in the world, you look at their top companies, 570 of their top companies are investing heavily in R&D.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back with us in Stars in Our Sky podcast. We're continuing a three-part series on the China X Factor. If you haven't yet watched the other podcasts that we've done, you can find them in our channel. One interesting fact is if you subscribe, you'll always get the pop-ups to know about it. Now, I'd like to start by celebrating with my co-hosts and saying, just a couple of weeks ago, we made a post on LinkedIn asking our networks to please come in and help us because we started this young channel and we had 200 subscribers, most probably all our mothers, our uncles, and friends and kids. Yeah, and lots of kids. And we asked our network to help us out. So a big thank you to the network. We are over 5.5 thousand subscribers. Yes. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone.
This is being recorded May 27th. And by the time you watch this, my hope is we're at 10,000. We need to know from you guys what topics you want. Now, this topic was suggested by some of our followers, and part of it was to understand what's going on in the war, to understand why is China so quiet. What is the real strategy? Is this war really about Iran? What's happening in the world? So, in this episode, we're going to connect three big questions shaping the next decade. Whether the global financial order is shifting, whether AI is accelerating a new US-China power struggle, and whether China's long-term development model is built to outlast Western short-term or short-termism. The aim is not to treat viral claims as settled truth, but to test them critically. We want to look at some facts. We want to look at statistics provided by some world organizations and then separate the data from the speculations and give each host a clear debate angle backed by one sentence arguments and objectives. So we're gonna look at this episode in three topics. The series started with BYD at the beginning, the power shift happening in China, and it being the manufacturing of the world was the second episode. And today the topics are, is the global financial order quietly resetting? Is AI creating a new Cold War and a new class divide? Last but not least, can China scale its way to superpower status by 2035? All right, so let's dig in. Are we seeing a managed shift away from pure dollar-centered globalization toward a more fragmented system shaped by inflation, gold, because that's back really, really strong, and strategic manufacturing? look, if I had to look at it, the dollar may be facing gradual diversifications. The data still shows it remains the anchor for global reserve systems. So everybody watches every couple of months on what the U.S. reserves or the Federal Reserve will say regarding the interest rates. Here's an interesting fact. The US dollar accounted for 57.79% of allocated global foreign exchange reserves in Q4 of 2024. When we look at that, it means the dollar still has a lot of power. The US has accumulated an amazing amount of debt. Could it be that they're trying to dilute their own currency so they can pay their debt faster? Rian, how do you see this? Where do you see the impact of inflation? And what's your thoughts about our global financial orders?
This podcast is sponsored by eSky, a revolutionary AI-powered state-of-the-art learning management system for small to mid-size enterprises.
Hey, Mark, and hello to all of our viewers and subscribers. Hit that button down there, guys. We're very excited about it. I don't know, Malik, to your question there, inflation often functions as a political pressure valve, because it reduces the real burden of debt faster than governments can cut spending. An interesting fact from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics is that the U.S. CPI inflation was 3.8 year-over-year in April 2026, up from 3.3% in March. So, when it comes to inflation, it's always an interesting thing, when it comes to the gold value, the S&P 500, all the indicators around the world. And then obviously, all this, the war with Iran, with the oil and prices skyrocketing. Because, when oil price goes up, everything goes up. That's just the way,
Yeah, you're feeling it at the groceries these days, right? Like
yeah, that's how
a piece of
works. Everything
a piece of lettuce that was $1, a couple of years ago. If you're going to Costco or your local grocery store or Publix if you're in the United States or Maxi if you're here, it's easily $5-6. That's huge.
Yeah,
That is huge.
massive change, hey. But for me, if you look at the, the gold and everything that's in there, gold has never been this high. That's the value of gold at the moment is crazy. And, to your statement earlier about the Federal Reserve and with, the gold, reserves that America has, I'm just wondering if they've passed an audit yet. Because they haven't passed an audit since like the 1970s. So, is the gold really there? And I know Germany and much of Europe have, they've taken back a lot of gold into their own, hands. And, talking about paying off all this debt, I know there's also rumors that, the administration will be, they're aiming to pay off some of the debt in crypto. So there's a big push on crypto. There's a big push on, lowering prices on the oil, and getting this war ended, because it's not helpful to anyone at the moment. But Gabby, what do you think, mate?
Honestly, I don't really know like where the world is heading, but like I'm listening to what Malik was saying about like a global financial reset, and where I see, I think this is still premature, right? It's still premature to look at that. And the reason why you would look at that like as still early is China's currency, like China being our main topic today, right? Their currency hasn't changed in the global market, right? I think they were saying like 2.18% of the global reserve. So they're still, no matter what they're doing, is still not being the main currency, right? The US still dominates in this area. Most of the global, countries are using US currency as a dominant force. So given that this is not going to change, maybe things are changing, but the systems is still mostly the same. That's what I'm seeing. So yeah, things are going like, but not at that a drastic change that we're seeing at this moment.
You know what I was thinking about? You guys have you guys heard the BRICS currency coming? And for the longest time, it was on full steam. Is it possible?
It was going for a while, and then it slowed down quite a bit with all the with all the tariffs and everything else that's going on.
Yeah. And is it possible that the entire premise behind the wall was to kind of block, divide, and conquer in order to block that BRICS currency that was going to be gold backed? It seems to have slowed down a lot. We've weakened Europe.
As far as I know, China signed a deal with the US that they, going back to the petrodollar, the American dollar for all, transactions around oil and gas and that kind of stuff. So I think they lost a lot of momentum with there was quite a large thing at the beginning of the year with South Africa in there, Brazil, and I think India. And I think there was a big shakeup with all the tariffs and stuff where, some of the power actually came through of the US with some of the levers that they've got to pull.
None of us actually sit in the closed room doors. So we're not privy to these conversations. But although what news outlets report seems like a dimmer picture, is it possible that the U.S. actually got what it wanted at the end with the current president's policies, where they actually blocked that currency that was going to shift the global financial order away from the U.S. dollar, and then we re-cemented the oil dollar back in? Is that a possibility? And we've marginalized middle powers, as was stated by one of the country's leaders. And right now, we're just back to two main powers, China and the United States, battling it at the world stage.
Well, I think it's important bit that you just said there. Malik, it's what we get fed. It's what we see. We don't see all the other stuff. We don't see the backroom deals. We don't see the, if you want to go get the truth, you need to go and find it yourself these days. So, but I do believe, and so this is one thing with Trump. He's a great businessman, right? There's a lot of reports, and I know some people are not going to like the comment, but this guy does this for a living, and he's running the country like a business. So where you see a need, that's where you provide service. Where where you can add value, you add value. So and it seems like, and this is where it turns a little bit funny sometimes, is that he's always a couple of moves ahead. So, they implement the policy, like, let's say, okay, we're going to do 40% tariffs on China. Then, 2 months later, Supreme Court says you can't use, this law to enforce the tariffs. Then he's like, okay, well, then we just use a different law to enforce the tariffs. So, that kind of stuff, I think as a businessman, it's to me, it's almost like a bit of a masterclass in leadership and how to, the art of the deal. I think there's a lot to say for that. But also, I think that, other countries, and we should not, diminish their participation in this. I think they're also playing these games, and it's like we only hear what, like the mainstream media or whoever you follow reports on. But at the end of the day, I think there's a lot to say for, just watching the CPI, just watching prices go up, just watching, fuel. I mean, just gas. I mean, I'm in Illinois, so we tax to the hilt, to see the gas prices go from, I don't know, $3.50 to $5.70, in a few weeks' time. That's, I know the guys in California is like permanently at $8 a gallon, but it's pretty interesting to see. It's pretty interesting to see the prices go up. But what my concern is, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this, is that, petrol and oil and gas to me is one of the only things that fluctuate. Everything else goes up, but it never actually comes back down again. So, and that's always an interesting thing for me. It's like you say, like the head of lettuce, a few years ago it was $1. Now the lettuce head price doesn't fluctuate like oil. I mean, now we're paying $3 a head of lettuce instead of going, okay, well, should going down, shouldn't it? So I just think, at the end of the day, these guys' profit margins are just exploding while the whole economy is getting treated like, just handing around by different countries. And, whatever moves they make, we're paying for at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
Cancel.org, redefining global consulting, delivering world-class solutions through proven methodology, measurable and sustainable results.
Well, that last podcast, remember I was saying it's no more cash is king, is export is king, right?
yeah.
And the countries that are leading the way are the ones that are able to manufacture in-house. If you look at if you compare the US just to China, okay, from a manufactured standpoint, US does 10% of their GDP is on manufacturing compared to China's 24%.
Yeah.
Just think of that for a moment. China is growing their GDP numbers on what they're manufacturing for themselves and exporting to outside. US is relying still heavily on other countries manufacturing, right? So that's a huge shift. If they're able to increase that number in the US, then okay, maybe we're going to be able to stabilize something. But in that case, the one that's going to be leading the way for the future, China definitely from that, maybe not from a currency yet. So we're still seeing them weaker on a currency standpoint, but definitely from a manufacturing, and that could be scary, if they're
Well,
that's their strategy.
maybe that's the plan to reduce the value of the US dollar so that paying the debt in US dollars when you're increasing crypto and its value compared to the US dollar, you'll be able to pay it much quicker. And by reducing your US dollar, you can bring manufacturing back. So
Yeah.
you add, to validate, by the way, and we were correct with our analysis in the first part of the series when we spoke about BYD, the statements that came out from Volkswagen this week, okay? Volkswagen, right? Das Auto, the car that the company that's supposed to be all about cars that had one bad decision after the bad decision. It seems like a domino effect of a whole bunch of things. The China BYD, the tariffs, them going all electric on a whole bunch of lines, and then they're walking backwards that and reintroducing gas lines, canceling some EVs, and in a statement made by their CEO this week, restructuring that to refocus on hybrid and gas. Why? Because I think maybe the United States is trying to bring some manufacturing back. Meanwhile, like you're saying, Rian, the central bank bought 1,044.6 tons of gold in 2024, third straight in a year that's above 1,000 ton, and that's according to the World Gold Council. And gold trends full year in 2024, and we seem to be going in that direction. So it seems like the U.S. and some countries are hedging their bets by going back to buying gold because they realize the fiat currency is losing its power.
I think that's an important bit to remember. I mean, if like we've talked about, being young and seeing the gold price, and me growing up in South Africa, and all the stuff that we went through there. But it is, it's like the feeling of physical valuable things, like silver and gold are becoming, necessary again. It's like, it's almost like the saying "cash is king" is no longer valid, because that whole system is busy changing, morphing along with AI. I mean, like countries like Australia, you barely use cash anymore. Everything's electronic, and to move that system over to crypto, I don't think it's very, it's a very difficult thing. It's more people's reactions to it that they're concerned about than actual system. So I find this really interesting if you look at it on a global scale, and how, like the BRICS countries tried to block that by bringing in their own supply chain, basically. But one thing that I think that I find really interesting is that China and the US are dependent on each other. Doesn't matter how you slice it, like the China doesn't have the spending power to build their economy. So they are reliant on a big country like the US with big spending power to actually build their economy. So, that's where things start getting interesting, and you go, okay, well, yeah, they got more people, they got more, cheaper labor, they've got, everything else. And then the US going, okay, well, now we're going to put tariffs on, so let's just move the whole supply chain, which you can't do. It takes forever, to do that. So you got to do it in stages. And I think that's where China's got a massive advantage over where we are now to any country out there. Perhaps not, that much of, over India, but India doesn't have the infrastructure to deal with all of this stuff. I mean, if you look at Shenzhen and the factories in there, and, I've personally been there, and that's mind-boggling when you see what the technology is that they have there.
Yeah, I mean, you bring India, which is going to bring us to our next topic, and AI, but both China and India both became outsourced hubs of the world. We didn't look for them as quality, but it was more the manufacturing and the set of the world. I guess we can conclude, and our audience can make their own conclusions. There's definitely a reorder happening around global financial systems. The war was not what it seems to be. It was not the U.S. versus Iran, because the conclusions, if you look at it, the BRICS is slowed down significantly. It's all I could say. Some of the main parties inside are no longer allies, so I don't even know how they'll do business. The biggest cartel was OPEC. OPEC is weakening day after day. So even if your US dollar is pegged to oil and OPEC is no longer there, with the UAE stepping outside, others will follow suit. So now your barrels of oil this week, for the first time after Trump made his announcements, are dropping down. So the U.S. still remains to be in control. The words of the President of the United States still dictate markets. Yet, like Gabby was saying, and like Rian, you were alluding to, those who are capable to export now have a seat at the table. China is now officially the only contender to be the second global power with the United States. And India is not far behind.
Just to interject there, did you see all the ships that China is sending to Taiwan to protect that part of it? Because that's where all of their, AI chips and stuff are getting, there's a massive boom in Taiwan.
Rare earth metals. Yeah, it's rare earth metals.
So,
right?
According to some reports that's out there, with Trump going to China and them having a conversation, President Xi, said to him, look, you can do whatever you want, but leave Taiwan alone, yeah? And that's that. How long has that been an issue for? I mean, it's crazy if you start looking into the history of that.
Yeah, so the world we live in is a fairly complicated world. It's not one factor that dictates your dominance. There is the financial markets, there's Wall Street, there is the barrels of oil and everything we just spoke about. And then there are certain revolutions, things that come, once in a lifetime, industrial revolutions. I would personally argue, and everything we've been talking about from the beginning of the year when we started this, AI is the next industrial revolution. Oh, yeah. Now, is the race for AI creating a new Cold War? Is that what we're living? And you hear a lot of, Jensen Huang and Elon Musk and Sam Altman talking about a massive class divide. Okay, so will AI mainly create abundance and productivity, and no one is going to need a job, like Elon says, or will it deepen labor disruptions, concentrate power with a few, accelerate the U.S.-China strategic rivalry? AI is no longer just future talk. Okay, we're talking about getting to AGI within the next couple of years. This became very realistic. 78% of organizations reporting using AI in 2024, up from 55% in 2023. These are the statistics according to Stanford 2025 AI Index. All companies are shifting resources to go about it. How do you see the AI race right now shaping economic policies, class divide, etc.? Gabby, why don't you let us know what you think here?
Go Lean It. Go Lean It offers a symphony of efficiency through lean services and solutions, driving scalable and sustainable results. Visit goleanit.com.
Look, we talked about a little bit, we touched on this last time, and I know that when it comes down to the business world, it's all about margins. And what people are looking at is, how do I reduce costs? That's really the main topic that everybody's talking about. With everything, with inflation, how do I reduce cost? And the good news from AI standpoint is it drastically gets cheaper from year over year to get AI. And that's really the great news, right? Like if you look in just 2 years, okay, from 2022 to 2024, AI reduced its costs by 280 times, right? 280 times cheaper to get that, right? So there's, again, it becomes no-brainers for, CEOs to adopt this, because they're just saying to them, like, this is a technology that's just going to keep on getting cheaper, as opposed to, when you're investing in labor and investing in other areas like raw materials, it's just something that keeps getting more expensive year over year. Correct?
So Gabby, on that, what do you think about reports like yesterday where Uber came out and said that they've already, within the first 4 months of the year, used up their AI budget? That's how expensive the stuff is to use at the moment.
It is expensive. It's still expensive. And I agree with that statement for sure. I mean, it's technology. I think the problem is they're not sure how to use it. There's this joke I see on someone posted this thing on LinkedIn where they're just saying, like, the CEOs all say, we want to have AI. What are we going to do with it? We have no idea, but we all want it. So I think there's a problem is they're acquiring it quickly without having the right vision and strategy and really knowing how are they going to use it. They're trying to just be ahead in the race. Now that's a problem in racing, right? Is that it's sometimes you forget the strategy and then you start running. Have you ever run a marathon and just started sprinting too early? I think that's what's happening, is a lot of them are panicking and trying to go really fast, really early, and is the one that's kind of pacing themselves are the ones that are going to win the race in that. But there's two philosophies with AI, that like two extremes I find. Like Sam Altman, right? He thinks that AI is going to be there to enhance any operations. Where on the other hand, you got Elon Musk, who says it's going to completely eliminate jobs. It's hard to tell. It's hard.
I think it's more
Like
propaganda.
he's saying, Elon Musk even went on saying that I don't even think you should even bother by going to medical school. Don't even bother.
I can see,
Right? Because even if you're replacing you with machines, right?
I can see certain if you look at the statistics at the moment, I think there's a report that the predicted job loss out of this whole AI thing used to be between they thought it would be between 50 and 80% of jobs would be replaced. Because if you look at like your physical cat, they don't have the dexterity yet or the robots that they're building. To my point, which I made a while back, is we've been told that the Earth is overpopulated, but we're producing 200, 400,000 robots a year now. So don't they count as population? I don't know. Should they? I don't know. But at the end of the day, they've now come out and the statistics say that it's going to be 22% of jobs that are going to be lost to AI. So the predictions shift every day. It's like everyone's got their opinion and their where it's going to go, and we all listen to the top 4 or 5. AI. There's over 2 million of them. That's perfect. And I think it's interesting from a programming perspective because programming is evolving rather than dying. Yeah, with developers moving towards prompting, validation, architecture, supervision. Remember with the whole computer revolution too, with the .com era, it's just like everyone was scared they're going to lose their jobs, but it ended up most people pivoted to a different industry or to a different side of it. Like I know these AI engineers, they get paid a mozza because they get stolen. The one guy they spoke to yesterday has been poached 5 times in 4 months. So working at NVIDIA. So, and another fact from Stanford is that the US-based institutions produced 40 notable AI models in 2024, while China produced 15. So, there's a lot to say, like you say, Gary, for where people are focusing. Like they're focusing on, do we get more or do we get quality? Because
Yeah.
quality, and we deal with this all the time now, is that people, they just replace the whole department with AI. But their data is incorrect. Their data is bad. Their systems don't work. Their processes are falling apart. It's like you can't do that. You got to step back like every other change. You got to make sure all of your variables are right before doing this and moving on. So
Yeah, and I saw a change in org chart that was interesting. Someone posted where you have like a project manager in the new future state, let's say, project manager, and then they have AI agents under that project manager. So a human is a project manager and then AI agent. So you're basically hiring the project manager and then everything underneath you is AI agents. And I was actually like talking to a doctor over the weekend, a good friend of mine, and we were evaluating his operations, right? And he was just talking and saying, what the people do in their day to day. And I was asking questions, take me through some of the tasks. And what you realize again, over and over, and I do it with doctors, I do it in manufacturing, is the majority of tasks that people are doing are non-value added, right? Think about that. The clients are not willing to pay for that, for these tasks. And so today, if you look at even in the medical field, right, they're talking about 950 AI tools are approved, as opposed to like, I don't know, like a few years ago, only 6, right? 906. That means you're almost dominating the medical field with AI tools that are being approved. So meaning it's going to replace a lot of the admin work that's happening in hospitals. And that's just hospitals. And in manufacturing, Rian, we know that, right? How many tasks are routine? In order for you to produce anything, it's all about routine work and it's going to be replaced. So there is some things that are inevitable.
yeah,
It's just inevitable that it has to eliminate it. And it's a race. And we just need to look back and see who's going. But really, the main fact, guys, is AI is cheaper and it's getting cheaper year over year.
And customers are also getting savvy. I was reading this morning, customers are demanding from McKinsey, so McKinsey Consulting,
Yeah.
that it's no longer billable hours that they're getting back, because
Yes.
they want to pay for results. Because hey, your consultants are also,
the big four, right?
I can't argue against that. That's for sure. But so there's leaning out that fat. To get back to Rian, to your point when you were making about the spending on employees, I was just listening to the All In podcast at the AI summit that was happening, and they had Jensen Huang, and he was talking with them about the rise of the agents. It was the AI PR crisis that they were talking about. And he said, in my company, in NVIDIA, when I look at individual developers and single contributors, if you're not racking up $150,000 to $200,000 in AI usage, I wonder if you're doing your job efficiently or not. That became a new key result or a key metric. So you got to start looking at that.
Are so bloody expensive at the moment, right? Because
They are.
on tokens.
They are. But when you look, to go back to, is AI really creating that Cold War, and is it really a race, and is it going to create a class divide? If you're not adopting it, you won't be able to get a job.
This podcast is sponsored by eSky, a revolutionary AI-powered state-of-the-art learning management system for small to mid-size enterprises.
All jobs are going to have it. Right.
There was an interview the other day where, it was when we had the podcast with Dale Carnegie, and he said,
Your heart.
yeah, if you've got two people in front of you, you've got two technicians. One, or in sales, one knows how to work AI, the other one doesn't. Which one are you going to choose? So, for me, it comes back, and I remember these things because it comes back to lifelong learners, being willing to open up a book and read it, first of all, then actually, practicing, with the tools that's available and learning them, and then actually adopting it into your own business. I mean, that's what we're doing. Everywhere we work now, we work with AI. But we have to make sure that our processes and system can support it, and our people too. So it's a big development, cycle, which I find interesting. I think that part of it can just be good for us, And I think at the moment AI is a tool, and we should be using it as a tool. And who knows what's going to happen down the track? I mean, if it's going to turn into an alien, or it's going to build its own spaceship and fly to the moon or whatever. But at the end of the day, we're going to deal with what we have and what we know, and that's what I think. So the big focus for us at the moment, specifically with some of our customers, is make sure that your processes and systems and your data make sense before attempting any of these. Crawl before you can walk. Don't try and run immediately just because you're scared your competitor is going to implement AI. That's the message that I get. But going back to like China and the technology over there, and ways with the US and everyone else, I think China is playing the long game. They always have, and that's what I think. China, Japan, there's that whole epicenter there. To me, they're playing the long game. The US is playing the short game at the moment, because I think personally the US has gotten into this rhythm of 4 years, 4 years, 4 years. So every time there's a new president or there's elections, something changes, and it's not necessarily for the good or for the bad. It just changes. And I think that's where, a place like China is very stable. A place like, where, I don't know. It's just more stable for the long term. It's like boiling a frog, that whole saying. It's like we don't even know that they're busy boiling us, but we are. I mean, we slowly just getting warmed up, hey, everything's made in China, everything's cool. And now, all of a sudden now the US is in there. Now we're like we're trying to get our game together here, because we dropped it for how long before this?
You're right. You're right. And but if you look at it, private AI investment is, US leads the way at 109.1 billion, if I recall correctly, from 2024 versus 9.3 billion in China. I mean, so if we're trying to use, that's according to Stanford HAI 2025 AI index, right? So that's just from a monetary policy.
We have to be cautious. We have to be cautious about these numbers, and I'll tell you why. Because most of these are overvaluations, right? If you look at how drastic it is that the companies in the stock market that are promoting AI, and how many of them die after a few years, and people have lost their money just investing in them, because it is such a hard thing to evaluate right now.
But my point was, even though China still produced DeepSeek that runs on chips that were far more efficient, and they have the manufacturing of the chips, and they're leveraging Taiwan, which has a lot of the rare earth metals. So we're back to fundamentals. All these things require data centers, and the big push for the next decade is going to be data centers, chip manufacturers. If you're into the stock market, I would look
as
into
long as
Intel.
it produces results. As long as it produces results. I remember, like again, history will reinvent itself. If we look back at Toyota and US having General Motors, and one really pushes on quantity, the other one gets a little bit more quality, right? So as long as they don't go crazy on AI, and they're they know what they're getting themselves into, and it's just not just we're investing, and we're the number one people investing in AI, and then you realize that the things that they're getting out is really bad quality, and
Okay,
nobody wants
then
to buy,
then
then
take
we're
us
back
to
to
the third
square one.
topic, Gabby. Take us to the third topic because I do think it's about the fundamentals, and it is whoever's going to control energy will control the world. Whoever's going to get ahead in the AI and be able to have his hands on the rare earth metals at the best price will have more control. And I think these are the underlying currents behind all the wars we're having. Forget the propaganda on TV. These are real. The question is, with all these things happening, with the energy and the oils from different areas, nuclear coming back and all that stuff, can China scale its way to superpower status by 2035, which, is trying to do in certain industries? Okay. China's 2035 ambitions are massive. And success depends on whether productivity can outrun demographics and debt pressures. China's GDP per capita was 13,303 in 2024. World Bank open data claims that. They are ahead. They're running. What are your thoughts, Rian, on China's scale to power based on where we are today and the policies they're putting in place?
Man, you know what? It's an interesting question, Malik, because I want to agree with Gabby there for a little bit. The US is spending a hell of a lot more than any other country on the development of AI, and I get it, but the energy consumption is the problem at the moment. So passing a law that the AI companies are now responsible for producing their own power. And all they're doing now is some of them are really clever and they go and buy up other power suppliers that's supplying, the grid. And what's the thing in Virginia? There are 50,000 houses without power because the power company got bought up by an AI company. So, those things, to me is a bit of a watch out. China's advantage, is not simply cheap labor anymore. I mean, that's, to me, cheap labor used to be a thing, but there's so many other countries now, and I mean it's quite scary how cheap labor has become in other countries, not just China. So it's not really an advantage anymore. It's a density of suppliers, logistics, industrial ecosystems. I mean, China has got, let's face it, China's got their shit together, yeah. They've been building these logistical systems, and they've been building them for 70 years. Obviously they're ahead of everyone else. They've got the infrastructure, they got the supply chains, they got everything down. But all of a sudden, you shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and they start running out of power, or they start running out of energy, oil. So in my opinion, every country has its pinch points and its bottlenecks. So, that's why it's also, important for us to get rid of all these silly wars all the time, because that's just feeding into the military industrial complex. So, China generated about 4.6 trillion in manufacturing value added in 2024, according to the World Bank. So I just think that there's a lot to say for, where you spend your money, first of all, in which sectors, and how quickly, to Gabby's point, how quickly are we going to be able to adapt to bring the costs down? Because that's the only way these costs are going to come down, is by people getting better at it. The energy solutions that we need to come up with.
Are you keeping in your equations an IPO like that of SpaceX, which is getting close to 2 trillion? Which all of a sudden they're thinking of putting the data centers in space, and then you're not gonna have the cooling. You don't have to worry about cooling. The energy is gonna be solar. That's brilliant.
That goes up to space, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all interesting ideas, and I think it's that it's working towards the fact that everyone knows that energy is so expensive, and that's the downfall. It's like I listened to this podcast the other day. The guy was talking about the Industrial Revolution. So, when they started building, the railroads, it took it took the world basically went bankrupt. It took them 10 years to get back up and running to the same levels. Then we went and built roads everywhere and highways, and it's same thing. Most of the countries went bankrupt, whatever. That's where all the debt and stuff comes from, or some of it. But then it takes about, what do they say, between 20 and 40 years for it to pay itself back before you have to start replacing and keeping up with the maintenance and stuff. Do you know what AI's life is at the moment? A data center, it's between 3 and 5 years. So we're spending all of this money to produce this. I mean, this one up the road here from you, this thing is huge. To provide it with energy, to have it built, just to replace it in 3 to 5 years' time again at the moment. So financially, this whole model is upside down.
Cancel.org, redefining global consulting, delivering world-class solutions through proven methodology, measurable and sustainable results.
And I'm wondering if China doesn't have, a little bit of an insight into that, to say, listen, guys, let's take our time. Let's see where this thing goes, and then let's figure out this energy consumption thing.
Would you agree with the statement that there isn't one revolution happening, but two? Because there is the AI, and whoever's going to win the race for AI, which is helping with computing power, is going to help in the medical sector, is going to help in the financial sector. We'll be able to cure cancer. Quantum is coming, and I've been talking about that. And then quietly, robotics.
You
Right?
know what? An interesting one. Sorry, I have to jump in here, Gabby. I know.
Yeah.
But you know what the cool thing is right now is, I mean, I've got an investor friend and whatever. He's like, you know what? If you don't have the money to invest in AI or computer chips or whatever, because NVIDIA stocks are through the roof and everything else, focus on the people that are making the actuators for the robots. That's now where a lot of the smart money is going, because the actuators are what makes it move and all that kind of stuff. And even there, the technology isn't where it should be. So I don't know. Watch this space. There might be some interesting developments in other companies.
That's interesting. I'm going to research that. We'll get back to everyone. I went heavy on Intel this morning.
Who's going to manufacture the hardware? We've got to manufacture the robots. It's going to manufacture the hardware. It's going to be on the line, and then it's going to be get into the system. So at the end of the day, it's like we've got all of these developments happening around AI that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. That we're so scared of that AI is going to take our jobs away. But meantime, it's also creating new jobs with actuators and, building the parts and the steel and everything that goes into it. So it's an interesting time we're living in, mate. And it's going quick. I mean, when the internal combustion engine, I mean, it took years for that to take into effect, but they didn't have the technology we have now. But I mean, now
you realize that 3 years ago, Rian, you realize that 3 years ago, no one knew how to use AI. And this weekend, I was talking to my mother, and she's like, "Well, I was on ChatGPT. I was talking to it in Egyptian, and asking it what to do with this, and it was answering me back." Right? So, a 77-year-old woman, the rate is a bit different from the
Chatty Pete.
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's interesting, when you start looking at all this stuff, it's like we always like this. We always look what's in front of us. But if you start looking to the sides and you see what else is developing alongside of this, and this is why, the SpaceX IPO is interesting, because there's talks of it actually merging with Tesla and everything else. So it becomes one big engine for whatever they want to achieve. Putting data centers in space, all that kind of stuff. That's it's really interesting watching all this stuff, because we talk about something now and tomorrow it's changed. Tomorrow it's already developed into something new, which is very exciting. But at the same time, I think that's making a lot of people nervous.
So our topic was about the China X factor. We have been debating from the beginning in these 3-part series whether the war was really about Iran, or it was just so that we can get at the negotiating table. with China and take all these CEOs. Now, China's been very smart. It's been doing these 5-year plan. They're very systematic. They're very calculated. Let me tell you about the industries. This is I'm reading this from the Congressional Research Service, April 16, 2026. It's very recent, based on this year's, the 15th 5-year plan set by the Chinese government. Here is the industries that they plan to dominate. Advanced materials, aerospace, between brackets, large civilian aircrafts, engine composites, electrical systems, agriculture. You know, we keep talking about all AI. Guess what, man? Putting corn, wheat, and making bread in itself is huge. Artificial intelligence.
Sorry to interrupt you, Malik. Did I tell you?
No, go ahead.
Did I tell you in Australia that China actually bought a river? They bought the first 6 feet of water in one of the major rivers in, I think, WA, in Western Australia. They own.
That's interesting.
They bought some of the biggest cattle ranches in the world is in Australia, and they bought them up. They plant food there for their people, and they export it back to their country, because guess what they're using their land for? They're using it for technology and to build, infrastructure for everyone. And, so, hey, how clever is it that they started building, even the US now, we want to stop them from buying farmland. Like, okay, so where do you start?
Yeah, like if you're in a position like Egypt where you import 80% of your wheat, you're constantly at your knees. So countries right now who are not in these, duopoly of two powers, or oligopoly, if you want to call that, they should consider how much they're importing, especially when it comes to food. So one of the sectors is agriculture. And they say become 85% self-sufficiency. 85%. China's saying that. They don't want to rely on other countries for agriculture. Artificial intelligence, and they bundled in the robotics, intelligent vehicles, drones, machinery, brain-computer interfaces. Digitization. Under digitization, so they separated AI from digitization and said that includes infrastructure, having 6G communications, national computing data, and blockchain infrastructure. What does that tell you about monetary policy? Quantum technology and AI model deployment for industrial use. Energy, and critical minerals. Solar cells, they want to be the best. Batteries, green hydrogen, nuclear fusion. Then instruments and meters. So AI inspection, extreme environmental flow measurements and calibration, and using quantum. So if you haven't considered IBM as a stock, start looking at IBM because of IBM Watson, okay? Industrial machines, CNC machines, major technology equipment like large liquefied natural gas chips, CR450 high-speed trains, marine economy, medical. They put a big emphasis on medical, novel drugs, biomanufacturing, and advanced equipment, R&D, so basic research, and semiconductor software, and then services, all professional services. This was issued by the government of China. It's reported on under the U.S. Congressional Research Service. That's what's happening. So let's take this to summarize and try to bring to conclusion. Gabby, where do you see that China X factor based on the 3 part series that we have? Where do you see the world going? What's your opinion, and what are the last few words you'd like to give our audience?
Well, I think they're definitely growing, and they're doing what you call an exponential growth. Okay, I'm gonna quote something. When I was reading the book, Your Next Five Moves, from Pat David. I don't know if you guys have read this really excellent book for CEOs. And he was saying, if you want to grow exponentially, you really need to invest, I'm paraphrasing, but investing in innovation, right? And so when I look at China and I see their strategy compared to anywhere else in the world, you look at their top companies, 570 of their top companies are investing heavily in R&D, right? And innovation. And this is how you exponentially grow. I mean, there's no tricks behind that. Now, apart from the fact that they're growing in manufacturing, right? They're growing year over year in their manufacturing for their GDP, but in the same time, they're investing heavily in their R&D, like we were talking about robotics, and BYD is a perfect example. Like you guys saw their cars where one tire goes up or something when there's a hole. Like one tire actually goes up, like one wheel goes up, and like it has a brain of its own. Now, all of that combined with really strong manufacturing, strong, export, export is king. All of these tell you that it's growing. Now, is this something that is happening today? Meaning they're dominating today? No, because the currency is still low. Okay. But yes, they're heading in an exponential rate, meaning if the other countries are not going to catch up, if they're not going to invest in the same thing, then yes, over the next 10 years, China will be the dominant force.
Go Lean It. Go Lean It offers a symphony of efficiency through lean services and solutions, driving scalable and sustainable results. Visit goleanit.com.
Hey, I just want to put a little disclaimer on this episode and on most of our episodes, so maybe make it applicable to all of it. But we don't give financial advice, yeah? So we give you our own opinion about what we think is happening. We do a lot of facts. Yeah, we do a lot of homework around that. Mostly Gabby does our factual, checks for us. Thank you, Gabby. But I just want to say, don't go invest in anything that we talked about and then come and blame us and sue us and all kinds of stuff. This is just our opinion, and we're just having a nice conversation like we do every day.
So, Rian, with that being said, what do you see about the China X factor, and how would you conclude our three-part series regarding China's place in the world, the war that just happened or is happening, etc.?
Malik, for me, it's more, global thing. It's like, you've got the US and China going at it. You've got Europe sitting on the sideline watching. We've got mass migrations everywhere, people moving, countries and stuff like that. And then you beg to wonder, is it just because now it's widely reported because of social media and all that kind of stuff? Or is this something that's always been happening and we just didn't know about it? But, at the end of the day, I do believe China is playing the long game. I think the US is trying to put some blocks in place where they can actually play with them. In my opinion, and I might be a bit biased coming from manufacturing, manufacturing is always a great indicator of how a country's economy is doing. I mean, if you look at, a country like Australia that basically got rid of their manufacturing base, cars, no more Mitsubishi, no more Ford, no more, GMC, all that kind of stuff. I think it's a watch out. And I do believe what the US is trying to do, bringing back, American jobs, American manufacturing in the light of AI, that's playing in the background. I think for me, it's more wait and see at the moment.
All right. So you guys, you've heard this here. We tried to explore and look at the role China's playing in the world. We called it the China X factor because in the midst of all noise, China is very quietly being very systematic, very persistent, and very goal driven. We looked at one example, which was the electric car place. And BYD, we showed how it disrupted and how it played a role in disrupting some of the world's biggest European car manufacturers, ones that were known for their luxury vehicles, even maybe forcing them to make decisions that were not well placed or very wise for the industry, that they're walking backwards right now. I would say Toyota might have been the one smartest one that decided not to dive all in and focused more on hybrid. But everybody else right now is doing a lot of steps backwards. We realized that energy will always be the ones that will own energy will have the highest chance of becoming the underlying power. The three debates made us realize that technology is moving very quickly. The human basic elements do not change. Humans need to eat, we need to take care of our medical, and we are social animals, and we'll have to find ways to constantly interact, and we will always find a way to survive because we're a very resilient species. I don't think AI is going to eliminate all jobs and humans are not going to work. I don't believe in that. But I do believe there's going to be a shift in the workplace. China is making big dents and they're being very systematic. And I think a lot of the world events are about trying to shift that power and ensure that no one else has just 100% dominance. So between the United States and China, there is this Cold War, in my opinion, that's happening right now, an AI race and a robotics race, and everybody else is trying to take a small chunk of the action. Rare earth metals that are used for semiconductors become key. And like Rian said, we have discussions, we share with you our insight and our financial insight as we're listening to it. It's by no means telling anyone to go do something. But hey, that's we're keeping our ears down to what smart money is doing and telling you even what we're doing based on that. If that gives you any confidence, you invested your risk. So with that being said, I hope you guys learned a lot from this. I hope you're tuned in. Let us know what other topics you want us to discuss. Maybe you want to know how to advise your children who are heading into high school. What careers should they stick to? The STEMs? Is English literature the next career? Because everybody's going to be prompting. Where should we go? Is that one of the topics? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe. It helps us tremendously so we can keep bringing this. Follow also our guest appearances. We have a lineup of guests that are just tremendous. We're talking world-class people. So thank you for everything. And Gabby, Rian, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one, guys.
All right. Take care.